after I outright refused to honor my son's heartfelt request to walk his fiancée, the woman he loves and plans to spend the rest of his life with, down the aisle, insisting that I cannot in good conscience refer to her as my daughter. My son is now confronting me with unexpected consequences that threaten to upend our entire family dynamic and force me to question where my stubborn pride ends and a parent's unconditional love should begin. I'm a 41-year-old guy with 2 kids from my previous marriage, John, who's 22, and Sally, 20. I'm now remarried to my 28-year-old wife, and I'm super close with both of my children. My son John recently got engaged to Abby. She seems nice enough, but she's been pretty insistent on building relationships with me and my wife. It's a bit odd because she also seems awkward around my wife. Abby isn't close with her own family, and she's told us a lot of stories about why. While some of her complaints don't sound terrible, it's not my place to judge, and I wasn't there, so I can't truly know. We've genuinely tried to make her feel welcome. However, Abby has pushed her way into several family traditions, even ones where she wouldn't normally be invited, or where only immediate family would attend. She started calling Sally sis after only a few months of dating John. She also has this strange sister-mother-in-law dynamic with my wife, which is uncomfortable. The biggest issue for me is that she wants me to be like a father to her. It's not because we've formed a special bond. We're very different people. I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just not based on any natural connection. My kids and I have a long-standing tradition. Whenever they visit, we have a private chat in my office before they leave. This tradition has become even more important to them lately. While they both get along well with my current wife, they aren't ready to have deeply personal conversations around her yet. One day, Abby asked if she could join our private chat. After I explained our tradition, John later begged me to include her, saying she'd never had a truly supportive conversation with her own father. We found a middle ground. I wouldn't include her in our private tradition, but I would join her, and John for coffee afterward and let her talk. That's when she started calling me Dad, even before they were engaged. John pulled me aside again, practically begging me to let her call me that. He went on and on about how I was the dad she always wanted, saying it right in front of her. She just really wanted it. She even told me she cried watching Sally and me together. She still gives me random "I'm a lucky dad" hugs. I didn't like it, but I felt bad, so I gave in. Now she wants me to walk her down the aisle and do the father-daughter dance at the wedding. I really don't want to walk her down, and I use a cane, so dancing is difficult for me. At my own wedding, I only danced twice. John is still pleading with me to do at least one of these, preferably the walk. Last Sunday, John and Abby came over. John and I were talking, and I was about to bring up the wedding issue when Abby walked in without knocking, asking if John had told me yet. I asked what she was referring to, and John said she wanted me to mention having a second daughter in my wedding speech and how much I loved her. I just stared at him. She then asked if I'd walk and dance for Sally. I said, "Of course." She yelled, "She's my daughter too." I replied, "It will never be the same. Sally is my actual daughter." I tried to explain that I'd happily talk about her being a wonderful addition to the family and how happy she makes John, which I thought was a good compromise. But she started crying. John apologized, and they left. Later, he called me from home, practically begging me to reconsider. Update 1. Mother's Day. Mayhem. I had planned to write this update sooner, but life got in the way in a couple of good ways. However, people kept asking for updates, and I had a free day, so here goes. On Mother's Day, my kids and their partners visited my ex-wife. It turns out my ex-wife and Abby are much closer than I realized. Abby calls my ex Mom, which explains some of this situation. Apparently, my ex has been encouraging Abby's behavior. During their Mother's Day visit, they were discussing the wedding. Whenever Abby referred to me, it was as Dad. My son John finally told her to let it go, which led to Abby yelling about deserving to be my daughter. My ex-wife, surprisingly, sided with Abby, saying she was right. John tried to be a voice of reason, telling Abby that I was trying and she needed to be realistic. Sally then firmly stated that I only had one daughter, which was apparently a response to Abby saying to her that my daughter should be united. According to John, Abby was crying. According to Sally, she was crying and yelling, and even kicked. something before storming off to her room. Sally also mentioned she went off on her mom but wouldn't give me details. Knowing Sally, that must have been quite a scene. Around 2:00 a.m., I got a text from Sally's partner's phone that read, "Abby really is great. She hasn't been perfect, but you should give her a chance, and you will learn to love her." I saw it when I woke up and tried to text back but was blocked. So, I called Sally, but they were driving. They stopped by my place later that day since I'm on their way home, and Sally prefers my cooking and liquor. They told me about the previous night. At the end of their visit, I asked to speak to Sally's partner alone. I asked if I had done something to upset her. She looked confused, and I mentioned being blocked. She said she hadn't blocked me but checked her phone and saw that I was, indeed, blocked. She then asked what message I was referring to. I showed her the text, but it wasn't on her phone anymore. At that point, we brought Sally back in and updated her. Neither of them was happy. A couple of days later, John and Abby dropped by unannounced, which isn't typical for our family, but I went with it. I was making salmon, which cooks quickly, so I cooked 2 extra portions. My wife served the food while I made drinks. The entire night. Abby tried to bring up the wedding, and John kept trying to change the subject, but Abby wouldn't let it go. We ended up discussing logistics because I was helping them with some good deals through my professional contacts. But I wasn't really interested in planning. Finally, Abby just blurted out, "So, I was talking to Mom. She said you can walk me down the aisle, and she'll do the dance, or you can dance and she'll walk. It's your call, but you need to choose soon." I repeated that I couldn't dance. She tried to argue that I had danced a little at my own wedding, but I made it clear that was different, and I still wasn't comfortable walking her. She got upset and asked, "Mom loves me, why can't you?" I felt bad, but I couldn't lie. I pointed out that she had John who loved her, my ex-wife, and friends. She had people who loved her. She said, "But other than ex-wife, those aren't my parents." I said, "Neither am I." She was very emotional, so my wife and I gave them a few minutes. My son and I were alone later. He looked exhausted. He said the problem was that after Mother's Day, Abby had called Sally and kept saying, "They are both my daughters," meaning she felt she shouldn't be close to one of us and not the other. She framed it as them against me. At that point, Sally apparently cried havoc and let slip the dogs of war. A lot was said, and old grievances were aired. John had to hang up before it got worse, but I guess Abby was really shaken up. A new problem emerged. Abby decided in her head that I didn't mean what I'd been saying. She thought I was just acting that way for Sally's sake. John told me he would handle it. He didn't. Now, I get text messages from Abby every couple of days, acting like we have some secret relationship Sally doesn't know about. She even called herself my secret daughter and chuckled. She invited my wife to lunch, saying 2 out of 3 of his girls are going out. She's even started using the tactic of showing up at events, like a recent barbecue, to portray a certain image. She hugs me more and holds on, always wanting pictures with just me or my wife and me, but always a few with just me to post with captions I really dislike. My wife is getting especially annoyed with how Abby treats her. Apparently, Abby even surprised my wife with Father's Day plans for me that had to be shut down. Still, she managed to insert herself into the day because my wife has a soft spot for her, and when Abby gets emotional, my wife tends to give in. My wife is a sweetheart. I asked John if he was upset with me, and he said no. He just wished things were different. He said we were good, but he was worried about his relationship with Sally. That's when I took some advice and suggested premarital counseling. He said he would talk to Abby about it. Abby is insisting that Sally go to her dress fitting, which could be a huge argument because Sally isn't holding back her feelings anymore. I told John that Sally loves him, and I'll talk to her. But for now, it's just stressful, all around. Abby is driving my wife crazy with her ideas for what my daughters should be doing, driving me crazy with dad-daughter content, and pushed Sally to her breaking point. Oh, and last night, she sent me an email with 3 styles of father-daughter dances and song options, so I don't feel any more respected or heard than before. The 6 of us have barely been in the same room to let things cool down since Father's Day, which was great until it became a nightmare. Update 2. Godzilla and GoFundMe. A cousin of mine, who apparently reads these updates and knows my situation, gave me a convincing argument. Dude, you can't keep people hanging. How can I argue with that? I apologize for how long this is. A lot has happened. My wife's pregnancy is going well. My main focus has been keeping her as stress-free and pampered as possible. This experience is so different this time around, both because I can be much more involved and because my relationship with my current wife is so much better than what I had with my ex. My daughter Sally has been fantastic, and even her partner has been great, helping with the nursery or driving my wife around when I can't. My wife doesn't know this, because it's a surprise, but my son has been building a crib for the baby, modeled after the one I built for him and his sister, to show my wife his support. My son is a good man, and he's still in there. He just has a soft spot for Abby. Which I guess brings us to the part of the movie where Godzilla shows up and starts busting up buildings. I called a family meeting with my kids to talk about the situation. I told John that Sally would only participate in wedding activities she genuinely wanted to, and that the guilt tripping needed to stop because it was hurting his relationship with his sister. Sally was happy I said it so she didn't have to, yet again. I told him that if he didn't stop Abby from messaging me, I would block her with a direct explanation why. We got a lot out in that conversation. John seemed to understand. But then, a few days later, John and Abby insisted on coming over to talk. Sally and I decided we would get everything out in the open. So, all of us ate at our place. Abby immediately started in on baby shower stuff, and I told her that was exactly the kind of thing we needed to discuss. I told her I understood she was trying to fill a void in her life, that she thought she was getting a father, a second mother, she apparently calls my ex-wife Mom, and a sister. I told her it was still possible to have those relationships, but she needed to start listening to us. I told her that for the sake of family, we would give her a fresh start if she agreed to respect our boundaries moving forward. My daughter wasn't thrilled with this idea, but loves her brother and was willing to try. Abby tried to argue that since we were starting over, we could define the relationship and just be family. We told her we weren't ready for that. It needed to happen naturally. She got mad that I'm closer with my daughter's partner, which is true. We just get along. She felt she deserved that closeness for trying so hard. My daughter said something about trying things we actually wanted. Abby ran to our bathroom, and John ran after her. After a while, I checked on him. I could hear her repeating, "This is not what I wanted." My wife, daughter, and her partner went out to the patio to give them privacy and salvage the night. After a bit, I got a text saying they had just left. I checked in with John the next day, and he said they talked more at home, and she understood. For a couple of weeks, things were good. The text stopped, except for the occasional wedding question since the date was getting closer. She stopped pushing herself on my wife and Sally, and we thought she was involving us less in wedding planning, out of respect. After all, they only got the venue at the rate they did because of my professional connections, and they knew I was willing to help financially but not interested in planning, even though I'm good at event planning. But then, I got a call from the venue telling me the card I used had been declined. This is a specific card I use for big purchases because of the miles, so I knew it had a high limit. That's how I learned they had changed the wedding date by 2 months. Despite this, I would still lose much of the money because it was too close to the original date. I was furious. I mean, I've been lucky financially, but I'm not so wealthy that I can just lose deposits like nothing. I called my son and told him he needed to get to the house, just him. They both came. When they arrived, I opened the door. Abby actually started with, "Dad." I think I just replied, "You've got to be fucking kidding me," and walked toward the table. Abby had the nerve to ask where dinner was. My response wasn't polite, as I made it clear that wasn't why they were there. I hoped my son wouldn't lie to me, so I asked what was going on with the venue. She started going into wedding details, but my son interrupted to tell me they postponed because my ex-wife was unavailable due to surgery. He hadn't told me because he was trying to put money together to pay the lost deposit himself, and he had just started reaching out to guests to let them know. That's when Abby's mouth opened. "We have extra time to work on our dance now." During this time, my wife came home. I was walking her toward the bedroom when Abby mentioned my pregnant wife with me. I calmly said, "I have different feelings about that and will elaborate further shortly," or something similar. Then I helped my wife lie down, got her water, turned on her symphonic covers of popular songs, and walked back to the table. I said something like, "You are out of your fucking mind. Have you even been listening?" I made it clear I was done with this nonsense. We all were. I kinda lost it, asking if she hadn't heard us last time because her head was up her ass. She was stunned silent. What a beautiful sound. And looked at me while I, admittedly with little filter, explained what Sally and I thought of our time with her and her attempts to force us to love her without even getting to know us. She started crying and stood up, shouting, "Then what was this even for?" John asked what she meant, if she meant them, and he started to freak out. She was frantic and said she meant delaying the wedding because, and I'm pouring another drink. To write this, it was a ploy my ex-wife and she decided on. They thought if I had more time, I would come around. Apparently my ex told her not to worry about the money because I'm loaded. My ex has always been bitter that I make so much more than I did when we were married, as if that's out of spite rather than my career progressing. I think she did that on purpose, frankly. But she not only told me that lie, she and my ex told John as well. He was distraught, repeating, "You lied to me," as she tried to spin it. But he was finally letting out how much he had defended her and covered for her, and she lied to him too. She was defensive and blamed my ex for telling her things and me for being stubborn. She yelled, "Why can't I just fucking call him Dad?" And finally, after so long, I heard John respond, "Because he is not your fucking dad." She started crying and said something about him being the one who told her she could call me that. He said he told her she might be able to eventually, but he had told her again and again to slow down. She started sobbing and went to sit on her chair but missed and fell on the floor. Appreciating physical humor to break the tension, I admittedly chuckled and hid my mouth behind my drink. This all led to a lot of sobbing. I said I needed to check on my wife, and as I walked out, she was repeating, "I just want him to be my dad too." I came out, and John was walking her to the door and apologized. I told him not to. They left. John came over a few days later and said they had a long talk at home. He even asked her if she would have dated him if there was never a chance of being in the family. He believed her when she said yes, but she admitted I was a big draw as well. I was the kind of dad she always wanted. My relationship with Sally is what she always wanted, and the way she said it gave John doubts that she loves him for him. I talked about marriage counseling, how his mother and I tried it, and while it didn't save us, it provided clarity with an impartial voice. I pointed out that they both like coming to me, but I cannot be impartial, and if they are truly trying, they need to do it for real. Abby texted asking if I was the one who suggested therapy. I responded with, "Does it matter if John wants to?" She asked why it was so bad, wanting to know what I thought, and I just said, "John is the man whose opinion should matter most to her." They fought due to the text. She agreed to the counseling, and the wedding has been postponed. I may have done a dance in celebration. So, they are in counseling. John said she struggles, but I obviously don't know the details. She is pressing for me and Sally to go to a session with her. Sally told her she did not want to hear Sally unfiltered, and I am not interested either. Abby has been leaving Sally alone. She stopped texting me except for the occasional general question, which sometimes includes an attempt to go deeper. My wife still occasionally spends time with her because she's very invested in her pregnancy, more so than I like, but it's my wife's call. So, that's where we are. Sorry it was so long, but alcohol makes for a poor editor. Update 3. Thanksgiving and the ex-wife's influence. I was told I should do updates here, and people have been asking me to, especially to get into what went down on Father's Day and at my ex-wife's house. I've been extremely busy these last few months, but I'm enjoying my temporary unemployment and thought of this account because of recent Thanksgiving drama. I will do an update, and then share what happened earlier. Oh, and to whoever made the joke that Abby finally got me to dance that made me laugh. I shared that with the family. My time has largely been spent caring for my wife. We know we are having a boy and are really excited, though neither of us really had a gender preference. I've raised both a boy and a girl, and both experiences were wonderful. Now we are discussing names and who we're going to honor. I thought everything had been quiet with Abby, but I recently found my wife crying and realized I was wrong. Given how busy I've been with work and my wife knowing I'd be free again this month, she kept this to herself. Apparently, Abby has been pushing for one Thanksgiving this year. My son said the wedding blowing up woke Abby up, and that therapy had been helping. But then this happened. My understanding is that while John has been talking less with his mother because of everything that happened, Abby did the opposite. My wife told me Abby dropped by one day with my ex-wife. My wife intensely dislikes my ex-wife because of lies she spread about my first marriage ending due to infidelity with her. Despite there being no infidelity, and the timeline making it impossible for us to have been together back then. Before anyone asks, my ex-wife doesn't actually believe there was infidelity. I would get into that, but I'm sure I would sound biased anyway. So, my wife looked at our camera app, saw who it was, and called my daughter Sally. Apparently, the two of them were keeping things from me because I was working 18-hour days, and they didn't want me dealing with anything else. I wish they hadn't done that, but I appreciate the thought. I'm really lucky to have such caring people around me. My daughter called her mom and said something that made them leave in a hurry. She won't tell me what it was, but she smiles when I ask. I called John, but he was dealing with some tough news at work, so I just supported him and left the other issue alone. The next day, Abby came back alone this time. My wife saw it was her and asked her what she wanted through the door. Abby said she wanted to apologize. My wife, being too nice, let her in. After a nice talk, Abby asked about the whole family getting together for Thanksgiving. My wife said, "Of course," assuming it would be our usual family gathering. A couple of days later, in our group chat, we were discussing details like who brings what. Abby asked, "What else is needed?" I replied, "John already committed." And then she asked, "What about my ex-wife? What should she bring?" In all the time I've known Abby, she's never made an intentional joke that funny, so I asked what she was talking about. She mentioned the whole family comment. My daughter and I both asked what made her think we counted her as family. She actually replied, "She is my family. I don't have a dad who wants me, just a mom, and my mom deserves to be with family on Thanksgiving." Sally replied, "Well, we'll miss you and John." Then Abby asked how she could say that. Sally asked how she could be so stupid. John said not to call her stupid, and I said that was fair. But there was no real way she could have thought my wife meant my ex-wife when she said, family. At this point, my wife had filled me in. Then, to make things even more ridiculous, Abby used my son's phone to add my ex-wife to the group chat. My ex then thanked us for the invitation and asked what she could bring. As I was typing, my daughter beat me to it and asked what she thought she was doing, making it clear she wasn't welcome but in less polite terms. My wife typed, "You couldn't have thought she was included when I said family." Abby responded that she wasn't coming as my family, but as hers. Sally then went off on her mom. She's already not talking to her much, and said if my ex-wife was there then she wouldn't be. I mentioned there was never a chance my ex was going to come, and said I understood Abby and John wanting to go to their mom's house so she wasn't alone. John typed, "Plans not definite, will let you know." He has since told me that he is not going to go to his mom's place but wanted to tell Abby alone first. All I can think about is Abby's comment about not having a dad who wants her because it means she's still thinking about me as a dad, just a negligent one. I mentioned that to my son, and he said he noticed it too, and had brought it up in therapy because family is such a frequent topic, though I obviously don't know the details. Wow, I thought this would be brief, but that was a lot. I will get into the crazy stories later if people are seeing this and want me to. Update 4. Pre-holiday bombshell and GoFundMe gone wild. I figured it was finally time to sit down and share the latest chaos. I was going to wait until after Christmas, but let's just say we ended up with a kind of pre-holiday bombshell that might get me coal in my stocking just for sharing. I also promised I'd loop back with the crazy stories from earlier in the fall. But honestly, those pale in comparison to what's unfolded recently. First off, the baby's due date got moved up a bit after my wife's last appointment. Everything is looking good, but the doctor says, "Get your bag ready." So my sleep is officially on borrowed time. Sally, bless her heart, is relishing the big sister aunt role and showing up with freezer meals every week, which is just incredible. Her chili is a war crime if you don't like spicy food, but it keeps me upright. My son has nearly finished the crib. If you saw it, You'd believe me when I say he inherited none of my carpentry skills but all of my stubbornness. We're ready. For the baby. As ready as two control freaks and one eager young aunt can be. As for the Abby situation, after the Thanksgiving chat debacle, things went quiet for maybe 2 weeks. I honestly thought John had finally convinced her to back off. We were organizing holiday logistics, and everyone politely avoided talk of shared holidays, splitting time, etc. True, there was an awkwardness in every text, as if any one of us might suddenly reference the word family, and it would blow up again. Even Sally's jokes were milder than usual. I thought stupidly that we were in the clear. The calm broke when Sally invited me, her partner, and John out for sushi as a low-key birthday celebration. Sally extended the invitation to John separately and reminded him this was just for bio kids. John said Abby was fine with it, honestly relieved to have a break from wedding talk. We had a good time. Sally vented a lot of zingers about her mother, and John let loose about work pressure. For a few hours, it was like old times. When I got home, however, there was a gigantic cupcake bouquet on my porch and a card decorated with 3 pounds of metallic glitter still stuck in my doormat a week later. It read, in Abby's handwriting, "Wish we could have celebrated together, Dad. Family always gets through rough patches. Love, your extra daughter." It's not that this was the worst thing Abby had done, not by a long shot, but there was something desperate in the note, almost pleading. I considered ignoring it, hoping she'd let it drop, but I admit I felt a wave of guilt. She is, as always, not subtle about her longing for inclusion. I took a picture of the card, sent it to John, and asked, "Should we talk?" He responded almost instantly, "Her therapy is not working so well lately. I'm sorry." A few days later, I got a call from Sally. She was less her typical angry daughter and more like a stone-cold FBI agent. She told me I needed to look at my Facebook messages, specifically the message requests folder, which, as a middle-aged dad, I didn't even know existed. I opened it up and found 5 messages from high school classmates I haven't talked to since Bill Clinton was in office. "Hey, saw the GoFundMe. What happened? Hope you get through this. Heard about the car accident, so sorry. Let us know what you need. We're all proud of you for stepping up, man. What a great dad." It turns out that Abby, with my ex-wife's help, posted a public GoFundMe to support a family man unexpectedly facing major medical bills after a car accident left him unable to work while expecting a new baby. The page was named Mine, and it featured a photo of me and the kids at a July 4th barbecue last year. The story was less clear, a blend of third-person narration, Abby's future father-in-law, and some first-person bits, with subtle digs at people losing access to grandchildren during a hard time. There were even scans, bad ones, of hospital bills, which after my initial panic turned out to be totally fake, just random PDFs, with most of the info blanked out. Abby's creativity, John admits now. Now, the kicker. Donations had already started coming in. Not a huge amount, but $700 from friends, a co-worker of mine, and a church neighborhood group Abby posted in a local community forum. I was mortified. First, no, I wasn't in a car accident. Second, asking random strangers for help is not my style. Third, and most insane, when confronted, Abby said, "But I was only trying to help. Mom said it'd be a blessing for the new baby and bring you closer to your old friends." The next few hours are a blur. I called John, who was shattered with embarrassment. He had nothing to do with this, swore he didn't know she'd posted it. He thought she was just working on a surprise for the baby. He immediately contacted GoFundMe trying to get the page deleted. I called my ex-wife for the first time in almost a year. When she picked up, I simply said, "Are you out of your mind?" and hung up after she tried to guilt-trip me about how much money I have. Sally, meanwhile, went nuclear and posted on her Instagram and Facebook. "No, my dad isn't sick, he's not dying, and he's not broke. If you're getting weird messages about giving money to anyone for us, don't. My father is just fine, and if he ever needs help, he'll ask himself." She also direct messaged every friend on the donor list. In the aftermath, one of them called my cell to verify, which she did by putting me on speaker and demanding I list what I cooked at our last Thanksgiving. The fallout is still ongoing. John and Abby are not currently living together. He says the GoFundMe was the last straw, and that her therapy, if anything, was making her more creative in her self-victimization. She moved back in with my ex, which, ironically, is probably driving my ex up the wall too. Those two are either best friends or in a constant battle of attention-seeking. Sally is going full older sibling mode, texting John several times a week and even dragging him to prenatal classes. Just for the experience, she says. But I think she's making sure he doesn't get sucked into his mother's orbit again. As for Christmas, John will be spending it here, and plans with Abby are to be determined after the new year. Abby, from what I hear through the grapevine, has pitched an extended family truce dinner that would include my ex, herself, John, Sally's partner, my wife, myself, and get this, my mother, whom she has only met once and whom she tried to friend on TikTok. No one is biting. To top it all off, last week my wife found a letter addressed to my future little brother from your big sis Abby in our mailbox. It was innocent enough, mostly generic. I can't wait to meet you, sweetness, but included a line about praying. Daddy will have room in his heart for us all now that we'll be a real family. My wife had to go for a drive. When she came back, she told me the next time Abby sets foot in the house uninvited, she's calling the police and then going straight into labor out of spite. So 2024 is arriving with quite a scene. A baby on the way, John reevaluating his life, Abby temporarily, I hope, out of the picture, my ex-wife burning more bridges than she realizes, and Sally and my wife forming a no more nonsense coalition. Sharp tongues at the ready. In the weirdest way, it feels almost hopeful. At least everyone's cards are now on the table, and I can honestly say I have no idea what's coming next. But if it involves GoFundMe again, Sally has promised to post my baby photos in revenge. If you want the earlier crazy stories, especially from the pre-baby drama, remind me in the comments. I may have finally hit the point where my family's melodrama writes itself. At least it keeps us all awake for those late-night feeding shifts soon to come. We'll report back after the holidays, unless the baby comes first. Fingers very much crossed for normalcy, but experience tells me to expect the opposite.